Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is for your holiday listening pleasure. Our top 3 podcasts on manifesting. So these are 3 stitched together podcasts, our top 3 of the entire year for 2021.
And what's super cool about these were also our most downloaded podcasts for the whole year. So not only are they super timely because we're all about manifesting at this time of year, they also are the ones that have been most downloaded. So we thought, why not offer them up again for you, because there is some gold in here.
Exactly. So the 3 podcasts that you have in one podcast this week are the 3 keys to manifesting, the 3 keys to manifesting your family vision, and make manifest the space that liberates you.
Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is the 3 keys to manifesting. So last week we looked at what was it to wrap up 2020. This week, we're looking at, in alignment with Amplify with Intention within Soul Driven Motherhood, which is our entire month of workbook and process to get you very clear on your vision and mission and manifestations for 2021. So in this podcast, we want to make sure that you're also getting really fantastic information and value so that you can do it, even if you're not in Soul Driven Motherhood, that you have a beautiful foundation in which to really get clear on how you're co-creating your world for 2021. So before we do that, I would love to remind you to jump into nourishingthemother.com.au, scroll on down to the red banner, drop in your email address, and once every so often we send you off an email with links to everything we've put out in the world, and then you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive deeper. So please join us at nourishingthemother.com.au.
Yes. So this is such a juicy topic because I don't know, 2020, in so many ways, threw everybody's manifesting plans right back at them. In many ways, if we think about manifestation from the perspective of, you know exactly how it has to look, right?
Yeah.
But to those who had travel plans and to those who had, big business plans, or so many people's plans that they would have likely talked through at the beginning of last year really just got thrown, on the cutting room floor. So it's nice to preface this conversation with that and with the truth that there is so much process and planning to it and visioning, and then there is handing over and not always knowing the form it's going to look like.
Well, I think the point is you're not solely in charge of creating, are you? That there's a co-creation at work.
It's like you kind of take certain steps towards something and then the universe meets you, to the degree to which you seek to meet it.
Yes.
Essentially.
And everyone you're involved with is co-creating with you. Like any one experience isn't just set up for you or them.
Yes.
like whatever, we're continuously co-creating our reality in every single moment, which means every human that's involved in that reality, whatever that is getting something and working towards something out of that manifestation.
And you've just reminded me of a statement that our mentor has said to us before, which is whatever is it? Whatever is consciously decided for you, you have subconsciously chosen. Which feels so weighty and so heavy.
Yeah.
But it talks to that like co-creation.
Yeah. It is weighty. It's one of those universal kind of statements, isn't it? That sometimes you're going to love and sometimes you're going to hate.
Yeah. You know, because we love to love manifestation when it's in the light, and when it's what we might see as high vibe and big picture and huge goals. But it can be a harder pill to swallow when we're navigating the trenches.
Totally.
So it is wise to bring consciousness to what you are seeking to create and what you're desiring for yourself, for your family, for your broader world, which is what we'd love to talk through the how of today.
Let's look at that. So step number 1 would be to get grateful. So you want to make sure that, much like our podcast last year, you've spent time doing a review of your previous year. And within that review, really spending time mining the gold, or looking for the lessons, looking for what you gained, even in the hardships of which you've traversed in the year that's preceded. So the reason I say that is because you've really got to go through a process of grieving to be able to let go. You've got to fully complete that cycle. So see, hear, feel, touch, taste, whatever is unresolved from you that stays residual and niggly. You don't want to be holding on to anything from the previous year as you step forward in the new year, because if you're holding on energetically, that then becomes bound and entangled with whatever you're trying to create, and then there's this tussle and this wrestle, and the energy gets murky, and therefore the results and the manifestations get murky or a little off course to what you might have designed. So you want to spend time having carved out, hopefully, some really sacred time, which is the purpose of why we're beginning our month with a releasing ceremony tomorrow night, is to really hear, see, feel, touch and taste the experiences of your year. And in doing that, when what is fully seen and fully felt can be fully dissolved. So you've got to really honour yourself, and you can't even rely on anyone else to see you. You've got to see your own suffering, pain, experience. You've got to hear it for yourself.
And so often that desire that we can have to be seen by others, by our partner, by our other intimate relationships, is ultimately really us desiring to see ourselves more fully.
Right.
But it can be hard, and so this is why
so hard
invitation to do that.
Yeah, totally. But I think you can't manifest with clarity if you haven't fully resolved and reconciled your previous year. It's like a bank statement, isn't it? You can't really just move forwards if you haven't reconciled your previous financial year.
Yeah, otherwise it's all just all over the place.
Yeah, and you don't really know where anything is, and all of that. So you've got to reconcile, like an accountant, your year that was, and out of that go, okay, well, these are the things that didn't work. These are the things I'm still holding on to. Let me see how I can be with those so that I can fully release them. What do I need to hear, feel, see, do, whatever, to be able to really let them go? And what have I really gained out of this year? What have I really learned? What has become really clear to me? How has it changed my perspectives and the ways in which I view the world? Like, what have I gained out of that year? Regardless of how the lessons came to you, if everything is working for us, then everything has a level of insight and wisdom in it. And it's a wasted experience if you're not going to pick that up and carry it with you. So I'd really love you to sit with what your previous year's lessons have been. And then when you've sat with what you've gained, we're asking you to take it a step further and do a universal flip on it. What we're asking you to do is all of the things that you perceive were missing, or all of the things that you wish you had, or that you're looking for in 2021, we're asking you to see where do they exist in form, space, and time in your year already. So let's say I was desiring a heartfelt relationship with a partner that I wanted to call in. I don't have a partner at the moment. Let's say I really want a deep and meaningful relationship. Then I'm looking for, where do I currently experience the connection or the flow of love and belonging that I would experience out of what I've attached to a relationship? Where am I already experiencing those things in my life in a different area of life right now? I might be experiencing them with my work or my career. I might be experiencing them with my children. I might be experiencing them with my friends, with my pets. Who knows, with potentially a Facebook personality. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, and we can easily miss this because what's at play here is this is the law of the one or the many. So nothing is missing, but it's either concentrated in the form of one, which if that's what you're idealizing is through a romantic relationship. You want all of those traits and actions and kind of feelings concentrated into the one. But if you constantly yearn for the one and feel like that one's not there, it's like you're kind of running after it and it's just constantly out of your grasp. But yet if you can look and say, oh, I can see that all of those things that I'm yearning for within that one person are actually dispersed through many different people or forms in my life currently. And therefore I can see that I'm yearning to be felt and heard and seen. Oh, okay, that friend, I know that friend fully sees me when I connect with that friend. And I know that I can feel touched by the ocean. And I know that I can feel warm and held and nurtured by my father. You know, and see that everything that you're desiring is not missing. It's just in a different form. And when we awaken within ourselves the presence of it in our life, it's like the universe then has the permission to bring it closer, because we haven't said that thing I don't have, that thing's outside of me, it's not me, I can't have it. Like there's energetically a resonance now with what we're desiring, because we see that we already vibrate with it.
Well, what you appreciate appreciates, doesn't it? This is the whole point of doing this, is to, when you appreciate, that's an abundant mindset.
Yeah.
And abundance fuels abundance. But if you're all sitting in the lack of, I don't have this thing, it evades me, it doesn't exist in my life, then that is the frequency you're sending out. That is the evidence you will look for, and that is the frequency that will come back to you.
Yes, and even if you're considering it simply by our brain and neuroplasticity, like if you consider it as a track, like you're just running the same track. Oh, no, it's not there. Nope, still not there. No, can't see it. You know, and your brain can't see it because you've given it so much evidence that it's not there, when in fact looking wider will build your capacity to see it and recognize its presence already.
Totally. So step number 2 would be to get really clear. Clarity of transmission. If you have a clear outward signal, you get a clear result. But if it's murky and muddied and a little bit like, oh, I don't know, maybe a bit of this, I don't know, or this huge umbrella like, I just want more abundance, I just want more connection, and it's these huge waving, sweeping umbrellas, then you get this kind of like dispersed energy back, when what you're wanting is a laser focus, so that you're really receiving exactly the frequency that you're after, rather than this dispersed kind of brush over. So we do want you to get really clear on what you want, and this means really going to town and creating the list of your dreams. What does it look like? What would you love, desire, want, with no limits for 2021? What would you want in 12 months? What do you want in 5 years? Like, it really is about, okay, gosh, I really want this thing, but I'm really feeling like I can't do that this year. Cool. So when would you see that happening? Okay, 5 years, cool, so it still goes on your vision board. Who knows when the universe orchestrates with your own divine timing to bring it to you? But you have to be willing to say, this is what I want. You have to actually put an order in with the chef, or else they don't know what you want, and you're probably not going to eat.
Sounds pretty dismal.
But isn't it? I often think that's a hard thing, though, isn't it?
Well, I mean, even as you're saying, I'm like, gosh, like, what do I really truly want?
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's like actually a way harder question than what you think.
Yeah, well, I mean, often we know more about what we don't want than what we want.
Yes.
And it's also because who really, I mean, we weren't raised to ask
for what we want.
Our parents didn't say, sweetheart, darling, what would you love your life to be? Whose parents asked you that? So therefore you don't have literacy in your desires. No,
it's so true. It's so true. So spending some time, though, really, and I don't care if it takes you, 3 journaling pages. What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? You might choose to go through the different areas of your life that are really meaningful to you. Or if you recognize that what you're seeking is growth or a change in one area of life that you're really getting clear, okay, let's laser in on that area of life. What exactly is the change that I'm after? Like, the clearer you can get with your request, the clearer your result will be. So it's worth really spending time on it. Now, I know also, Bridget, you always say you have to write it out.
There's something about the pen to paper that almost creates more solidity in the manifestation. It's like, and I mean, even when you're talking about that, even if you had to use 3 pages of journal notes to ask yourself what you want, even that's melanating your brain toward the question, what do I want? What could I want?
And it's like planting a seed, I always think too. Like, every time I write that down, there's an unconscious seed that's now been planted in my psyche, which in some way, like you just said before, whatever is consciously manifested essentially has been unconsciously thought about or conceived in order for that manifestation to happen. It's the same thing when we're writing this out. What if I could plant that seed and plant that seed and plant that seed? It might not be what I choose to focus my manifestations on for this year, but who knows? The seed's planted.
And the process of that stream of consciousness writing practice is also where you start to get the answers you didn't know you had as well, because you're asking questions you weren't asking yourself before. When you get asked new questions, better questions, you get better answers and you get more truth from yourself.
Yes.
Beyond habituated patterns.
Yes. Last year when we did Amplify in January, I spent a lot of time getting clear on what I wanted. And I was the person who wrote 3, we have a workbook, so I was like scribbling all over our workbook. But I think it took me about front and back 3 pages of what do I want, and then distilling it down and distilling it down and because what it started as wasn't actually exactly the manifestation I was seeking. Not when I really distilled it down beyond all of the fluff and cotton wool I think we tend to put around our desires. So I do really think it's worth spending time getting super clear and concise on what you want, and no assumptions and no just broad spectrum these things. Like, really specific. I want to earn this much in this month. I want to go here. Everything has to have purpose. It will feed this, really specific.
And recognize that when you are coming to this more solid place in what you do want, it's recognizing that within that it's going to come with its challenge, and it's not going to be this one-sided experience. It's going to have with it the equal, drawback in some ways to the great benefits and riches that you might experience.
Yeah. I'm really glad you said that, because that was certainly a conversation we had a lot of at the beginning of last year at this same time, was because you have to be careful what you wish for in a certain way, don't you? Because the reality you have is who you are. So if you're seeking to change your reality, you're going to have to change to be the person for whom that reality vibrates in that level or frequency. So whatever you ask for, you better damn well know that you want that bad enough that you're willing to change for it. Because if you're not really willing to change, that thing is not really possible, and probably not the carrot you need to dangle.
Yeah, and I mean also too, why it's worth, this is a good point to bring in this concept of New Year's resolutions, which I think are foolish in the most part, because you set yourself up to fail. Because if you're asking yourself to make a change and be something that your life doesn't even demonstrate is who you are right now, then you're setting yourself up to fail. But failure, it's not quite the right word, because actually you were just staying in congruence with who you are. But if you want to change who you are, that habit change can sometimes or often be grueling, because you're literally on the fly. Like, you know, anybody who started an exercise program, you fucking don't want to go to the gym.
No.
Like,
and it hurts.
And it hurts. And you want to quit. Or, you know, or if you're like going, I don't know, gluten-free, dairy-free, someone's going to like offer you something amazing and you just want to have it.
Yeah.
And the test is what's more important in that moment for you. It's not a failure, because you're just going to revert back to whatever your values are. But it's asking you, do you want this bad enough? Are you willing to do the work that's involved in having this? A little like you and I talk about with birth. Like, there's not a good birth fairy.
Yeah.
Like, there's usually a shit ton of work that goes into that experience, much like someone doesn't just show up on a marathon on like game day and run it. Like, they've done a lot of preparation to be fit to run that. And this is the work to be fit to run the year the way that you desire.
I was speaking actually on Christmas Day to my brother-in-law's daughter, so my niece, but not by blood. I'm not sure what you say to that. Is it step niece?
I don't even know what the word is for that.
I don't even know. Anyway, let's go with niece. And she's a fitness fanatic and
niece
completely gorgeous.
Removed? I don't know. Anyway, details,
whatever it is, I'm cool to go with it. And she just gets up, she's like 25 or something, and she just gets up and just goes for a run. And then, because we're down at the bay, you know, on the coast at the beach, and then, you know, pulls her board off her car and paddle boards, and then arrives back home to have a green smoothie. And I was like watching this like going, oh, I remember being that.
Yeah.
Now I was like, oh God, I don't think I can do that. I said to her, gosh, do you really love running? And she's like, oh, I love it. So we're like, you really love it.
Like, you're not even just saying
it. you really just enjoy doing it. And she's like, yeah, I like really do. And I said, okay, what is that? Like, how do you get to the point where you just love this level of physical exertion? And she said to me, well, I think it's the fact that you've got to build up to a certain level of fitness. And once you've built up to a certain level of fitness, it gets fun. It's not hard anymore. Right.
And then
it's fun.
And then you don't want to lose it as well, I suppose.
You don't want to lose it. And I was like, just as you were saying that now, I'm like, oh, yeah. Because that's me, let's say, in business or personal development or mindset, or I've trained myself through the really hard shit to get fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter. And now it's super fucking fun.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always. I was me looking at the 25-year-old going, oh, God, I don't think I can run down my street. Right?
Yeah.
But I just love that concept of it's just a form of fitness. And it gets fun when it stops being hard.
It's almost like once you step into like this your own slipstream in a way.
When you've built that muscle. And I think that can be applied to anything we're seeking change for, is that if you want it badly enough, you're willing to train your fitness level in whatever area of life that is, relationship, parenting, finances.
And if you're listening to this and you're going, oh God, but I'm not that anywhere, I call bullshit, because look in your top values, look where you find ease, and then you'll likely find other people don't find ease in that at all.
Right.
And that is your own slipstream. Like, you've built and trained yourself to operate at a level of mastery in some way, or that you're continuing to practice mastery because, like the runner,
yes,
you enjoy it.
Yes.
Like, you get something out of what someone else might go, oh God, really? You know?
Yeah, totally. So I would just love for you to think of yourself as the sluggish middle-aged woman looking at the 25-year-old fitness freak and go, which am I right now?
Oh, that's good. It is inspiring though to watch someone else.
I love it. Like I love watching it in her. And because I'm also in the back of my head going, I know that physical fitness this year I want to bring up in what has slipped off.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at that spinning plates as well, I was like, really? Like how? Like no different to birth, right? Or whatever. Whenever I've wanted to experience something that I see someone else experiencing, I'm not like, oh God, well, they get to have that and I don't. I'm like, what's the toolkit that got them there? What are the choices that they're making? What is the mindset that they have? What are the beliefs that they have? Because when I can break that down into a structure or a set of goals, I can follow that. And that's how I ended up having an orgasmic birth on my first birth. It was not because I knew anything different, but simply because I'd replicated another woman's experience to get the same outcome, and that's what happened. I followed her set of choices, her mindset, like a template. So I'm looking at her going, how does that get to be fun? I want it to be fun. How? So I don't know what my point is to that, but I was more saying that's how the conversation come about. But I'm now, as we're talking about this, going, okay, no. I can see where I'm really fit. It's just that I'm comparing myself.
Yeah, the form.
Right. I'm comparing the form because it's where I currently perceive that I'm underplaying and she's a high achiever. And so the stark difference feels, stark. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there going, so it would be easy for me to fall into not good enoughness. Yeah. Or I could just recognize that my brain is filtering my world for me to see what I'm trying to value, and I can choose to have that be inspiring.
Yeah, because that's the thing, you can either use that space in between to be inspiring and pull you towards it, or you can choose it to be shame-inducing and you'll collapse and then make it not possible for you, and so you'll continue on the same track. Like it's the choice, right?
Yeah, totes. So that was an interesting metaphor. The last step on getting clear is taking action. Now, you and I riffed around on this point as a nuance a little bit before we started recording.
We did.
Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so originally you'd had down there, now it's the how.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, but like it's the why, right? It's the why first.
Yeah.
Because so often when we get super clear on the why, the how comes in and takes care of itself. However, it can't just be a simple, I want $1 million. Let me just wish for it and intend for it, and I just know at the right time it's just going to happen because my why is big enough. No. The action step has to come in to get you into momentum, into motion toward it, so that it can also begin to move toward you. And that action doesn't mean that you have to get super nitty-gritty on the exact detail of what it looks like or what it is, but that it needs to be bringing clarity to your desired form or your desired outcome, your desired experience or feeling, so that it has something to crystallize. Yeah. Well,
I just think action is really important, and I think that it's often the part that's missing from manifestations happening is you've got to have intention, but intention without action is wish. And that is not a form of energy that has a behind it, like it dissipates. So there has to be action and there has to be intention and inspired action. For something to change, you do have to be willing to be active in the process of change. And I think that's neurowiring as much as it's habit changing and physically doing the things that create a different reality. I don't doubt that every incredible human across history who's had a vision of a flying machine and of electricity and of motor cars had a vision of what they wanted and continued to work towards it until, boom, it happened and they got it.
Yeah.
But had they just sat there and not tinkered away in their garages and sheds and failed 5,072 times and not tried to be the mad scientist to work out how you get there, it wouldn't have just like, boom, motor car developed by a human doing nothing.
No.
Or boom, electricity coming about by a human just
sitting there and just visualizing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So there has to be a level of action that is inspiring and energy giving to you. And I say that with a disclosure that doesn't always mean it's going to feel good.
Yeah.
Because it can be inspiring and hurt at the same time. But that there's a level of, okay, big girl pants on, here we go, I'm going to change the way I normally do things. And I don't think that manifestations work without a level of that.
And it's also so often, you know, I think about this, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about this in terms of relationship and also a lot of the stuff that you teach in Queen School. And so much of it is you go first.
Yes.
But yet we often want to see the evidence first that is safe for us to go first.
Yeah, you go first, universe responds.
But you need to go first.
Yeah.
And that's where it can hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can hurt just because change, we think we want change. And then it comes down to the nitty-gritty humanness of that. And we fucking hate it and fight it.
But look at the last year, how much, you know, humans have resisted all of the, you know, upheaval of our lives because it reflects, you know, our discomfort and resistance towards changing what we come to know as how our life should be.
Totally. Like, actually, I was having coffee with my neighbour, Kasha, today, and she was like, you know, the funny thing, I look at your book and I'm like, of course it had to be that book. And I'm like, I know. I literally was thinking that yesterday. Of course it had to be this book. Of course it had to be this cover. Why did I spend so much existential angst for it to be something other than what it was always intended to be?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean by pain, right?
Yes.
And resistance.
Like enormous growing pain.
Right. I had to become someone different with different thought processes, a different way of seeing the world. Like,
you're a different person on the other side of that book.
Yeah. Am I? I don't know.
No, I think you like that book being birthed into the world and the difference in how you show up is very clear.
Really?
Yeah. There's an integration that happened, I think, in the birthing of the book.
That's so fascinating for me to hear.
Yeah.
It's like watching a child grow, you know, when you don't realise that they've grown.
Yeah.
I feel like it's that. I can't see it.
I think there's an integration, like it's kind of it's almost like, you know how like sediment kind of like settles into like,
yeah.
It's almost like there's a better, just a more, what's the word for it? A greater kind of knowing.
Yes, I do feel that.
But that was not there. Like there was a groundedness, I suppose. Like it's almost like I've got this body of work that's crystallized now into something, and it's from which I
move forward.
Whereas before that the angst, I think that it was also represented in how you deliver your teachings as well. Like all of that had to be played out and then encapsulated in the book. For you to then go, oh, I've got this.
Yeah, I see that. I feel that. That's true.
It's cool.
It is cool.
But like, yeah,
it was really painful.
Really shit to live it. Really shit to live it.
Really cool shit to live it, but cool now. It's 100% true. It's 100% true. So you just have to decide when you're clear on what you want, what are the beginning steps and the intermediate steps, goals, if you want to call them that, the stepping stones that start taking you in the right direction. So I remember, you know, years ago, we did Flip Your Finances, and I was saying I really want to get more financially empowered. Finances didn't even register on my values. Like, it somehow murkily sat down at, I don't know, 10 or 11
but
or something.
The beautiful thing was, even when we did that, you were still really courageous in staying in your own discomfort long enough to go, I want this.
Right. This is what I'm saying with the action steps.
Yeah.
Is even back then when I'm like, this is really brutal, I set action steps. I was like, okay, so the person who's more financially empowered, what do they do? Well, I started to look, okay, well, they actually talk about money every day. They actually check their bank account every day. They actually know exactly where their money is, where it's going, how much they want to call in, and when they call that money in, where that's going to. Well, shit, Julie, you don't know any of those things. So I literally started there. Okay, that's what a financially empowered person is like. That's who I wish to become. So therefore I have to change my habits.
To build that in.
To be that. Because once I'm that, then the rest just aligns with that, right? So that began, right, I'm changing bank accounts, did the Barefoot Investor, set up all of our, so I knew exactly where our money was going. And as soon as I knew where it was going, I was like, holy shit, there's now money I get to consciously choose where I put without changing anything else. There's, in inverted commas, spare money.
It's like a superpower. It's like,
it's amazing, right? And then it was, okay, I'm really working on this area of life, so I'm going to stop reading all of the books on relationship, spirituality, consciousness, and parenting that largely take up the sum of my reading time. And I'm only allowing myself to read money books. And I'm not allowed to read one of the books that I really want to read until I've read a money book. And I would alternate them. So it was like a little bit of a reward for myself. But reading a money book was really hard. Like my subconscious just wanted to collapse. Like I can remember just struggling to stay awake for a single page. And then I built up to 3 pages. Oh my God, I made it through 3 pages. And then it would be like a, mini summary within a chapter. Wow, I just read a mini summary. And then it was a chapter. Oh my God, I loved that chapter. Give me more. And I was like, oh.
It's so cool.
This is how it stretches. But if I didn't consciously say, I want that, therefore I need to be this, therefore I'm going to pattern change these things about me in my day-to-day life, which is where change happens, not in the huge leaps, in the day-to-day actions. If I didn't do those action steps, I wouldn't end up there. So that's what I mean by action.
It's a great example.
Well, because I can so clearly call to mind what that felt like to just just literally want to go to sleep instead of read. Like that's how intense our protective mechanisms are around our identity and psyche. Like we just want to go unconscious.
Yeah. Like the animal that wants to shrink from the predator.
Yeah. And I didn't want to know. And it was fraught with angst and I hated it and I had to understand new language that I didn't know, let alone what it meant. I just didn't even know what the word was. So it was like this enormous growth process. So I had to ask myself at each step, I'm not eating the elephant in one hit. I'm just biting it off. Start at step 1 and just keep chugging. Like that's what a goal setting is.
Yeah.
So I think that when we're starting our getting clear intentions.
And to make it bite-sized like that so it's not overwhelming. Because if it feels overwhelming,
you won't do it.
You won't do it.
No way. I always ask myself that, okay, how this is not feeling good, how can I feel good? What would help me here?
To make it possible.
Yeah.
So true.
And the last step, the keys to manifesting, might seem a little bit counterproductive, but then you have to let it go. It's like blowing a dandelion. You remember when you used to blow the wishes to the fairies or to whoever, you make your wish and you're holding on to it and then you blow it out into the world and you watch it fly on the breeze and you just think, I hope it makes it to where the fairies live. You just have to let it go. Like the way that the little dandelions ride the breeze. You have to know that it's enough for you to get clear, set the intentions, say you're going to stay on track or keep yourself on track by daily intentions or daily actions towards becoming the person, but you tuck those things away and you just let the universe decide the how.
Yeah. Which can be really tricky because you want to control things.
Right, that's what I mean. It sounds counterproductive because up until now I've been like, right, you can co-create, you can, all those things. And then once you've said it, create some sort of ritual for yourself that's like kissing the dandelion leaves to the wind. And then let it go. Release any attachment to form. Release any attachment to it must be delivered in this way. Release any, you and I would both sit here and say we could not have predicted anything that happened in 2020.
I know, right?
Nothing. So trying to just hold on, my way is the best way. It has to be this way. If it's not this way, it's not manifested, is foolish.
Yeah. Yeah, so to be open to see what the form looks like.
Yeah, because it could be delivered in something that you could not ever conceive of because you're living you in your current reality, and the person who can conceive something different is in a different reality, and it's a better reality. But you can't decide the end goal from your viewpoint right now. So you set the intention and you just let it go, kiss it to the wind, however this is, this or something better. Let's do it.
This or something
I'm going to do my part. Right, you go first. Universe responds. I'm going to do my part. Here's my daily actions and intentions. Now you do your part, universe.
So powerful.
Isn't it cool?
And I think also too, it's about how do I consciously create my world to support this as well? Like what do I need to be constantly reading? Who do I want to surround myself with? Like knowing how much we are imprinted by the people we spend the most time with. How do I what do I want to have in my ears if I like to listen to podcasts or books, or, what do all of those things need to be in order for me to step toward what I've put down here? And am I willing to let it trigger me? Because you will be triggered into your growth. And that is good. So you want to move toward that and be with the challenge of what that can feel like. And notice of your own patterns of collapse, or your own patterns of like otherizing, and what you gain out of that as well. Because in our when we do our, which we've actually, this is actually going to go, this podcast will be live just after we've done our Amplify first workshop. But in that, if you join Soul Driven Motherhood, you'll still be able to catch the replay on that. In that, we're going to look at being with ourselves and how we've triggered ourselves, right? Because if you go back and look at 2020, for many of us, just dealing will have been coping mechanisms that we might not like be super proud of. And if we sit with that, we can be in shame. And the more baggage of shame and guilt we carry, the lower it tends to increase, or lower it tends to reduce our self-worth. And so we also want to see the magic of where we judge ourselves, and the magic of the denser stuff and what we got out of it, so that we don't try to swing too far from what are very natural human behaviors that we all have, and that when we can see what we've got from them, we don't get to be hamstrung by them.
Yes.
Which then cycles us back into them again, right?
So if you would love to join us for Amplify with Intention, you can do that via Soul Driven Motherhood, which you will find the links for on any of our socials: Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram, nourishingthemother.com.au. Scroll on down to Soul Driven Motherhood, and that is where you'll find it. It's just $39 for an entire month, plus 11 plus courses.
Yes, it's so much in there.
It's either a weekly workshop or it's a monthly program. So it is an incredible wealth of knowledge and conscious community that would more than happily embrace your presence, knowing that you share the same values. So please consider jumping in and making your 2021 exactly what you want it to be.
Yes. This podcast is brought to you by Honey Club and Reimagining Motherhood, your spaces for intimacy and feminine embodiment, and conscious parenting and inspiring motherhood. Come join us at julietanner.love and bridgetwood.life. Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is the 3 keys to manifesting your family vision this year. So we know, if you're listening to this podcast, that family, parenting, having and navigating a level of consciousness, meeting needs and fulfilling connection within your family is really important. But unless we spend the time at the beginning of the year to really map out what our end goal, vision, where we're steering the ship towards actually is, like any manifestation, it just doesn't really come to fruition. So where last week we looked at the 3 keys to manifesting as a general concept, Today, what we want to be looking at is the 3 keys to really getting clear on manifesting exactly the family life that you are after and making that intention really tangible. So before we dive into that, we'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au, scroll on down to the red banner, fill in your email address, and you will receive emails sporadically when we send them out. But we promise that we will let you know what is going on, and you then have an opportunity to know and choose if you'd love to dive deeper. So nourishingthemother.com.au.
So we know that in businesses and corporates and any kind of institution that values and mission and purpose are just go hand in hand with something that you would look to for the direction of that company institution. But how often do we really think about that with the same rigor with our family? It's not really culturally done. And yet it's really powerful to do in terms of setting the values that you want to raise your children with, in terms of planning your experiences together, in terms of how you collaborate together so that everybody feels good in the home, what boundaries look like, all of these kinds of things. If we actually set some intentions around and goals around and practices around, actually bring a lot more ease into and fulfillment into a family. So that's what we want to take this podcast.
Yes, it is. So where we want to start is key number 1. Just like where we reviewed 2020, what we want you to take stock of and take a conscious cup of tea for, rule up your piece of paper with a line down the middle, and on one side what's working and on the other side what's not working. And just spend some time just to spitball. Just you want to throw out everything onto the page. And then we want you to distill and dilute or condense, make more concise what you've got in each of those columns until you can start to see there's some really clear themes, or for you, key areas that you're either feeling super grateful and you want to spend some time appreciating, you want to keep going with because it's working really well, and perhaps some key areas where you're like, oh, that's feeling hard or sluggish, or I feel like I'm failing or not meeting the bar in these particular ways or areas. So we really want you to first off reconcile what, you've got to celebrate your successes, and I would really invite you to make them quite even. I don't want to see that you've got so much that you're hating on yourself for, that it's, really this tiny little amount of celebration and this huge amount of self-flagellation. What we want you to do is really keep asking yourself, well, what am I doing really well? What is working really well here? What is this well-oiled machine doing? How is this developing everyone and working towards the vision that I have previously had? What is working? And then to balance that with, and what is a bit clunky and not exactly as smooth as I would like it to be.
Can you talk a little here, because it can be very easy to go, well, the kids are fighting, or this behaviour.
It's true.
Right, like it's very easy to kind of throw.
To wish for the peaceful.
Yes, yes. We want to preface that train of thought with family dynamics and with the fact that
really good point,
that you are going to have support and challenge in a family all of the time. And that the more that you are desiring for this peaceful, calm, experience of your family, the more you are going to run into its opposite, because your family grows most effectively and for each person in the family most effectively at the border of support and challenge. So support and challenge, that border of it, will look like kids picking on each other. It'll look like edges of resentment sometimes, because that's often what we need to push ourselves back into ourselves again and go after what we value. So
I'm just appreciating you so much right now. Such a good point.
I don't want to set anyone up for a fantasy.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it can really be easy to paint this rose-coloured picture of it all being sunshine and rainbows.
Yes.
And there's function and dysfunction.
Yeah, I love that you nuance that out. Well said, Bridgie. That was amazing.
Thanks.
Quite right. So I guess maybe we talk about how we both see not working, and maybe that adds a bit of context. So when I think about reconciling in my family and doing like a stock take of what's working and that's how I look at it, is simply a stock take. I don't attach meaning when I'm doing this.
Yes.
So be careful not to attach meaning, because everything is neutral until you attach meaning to it. And beware the attachment of meaning, because it's not truth. It's wounding.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing this, I literally look at it like a stock take, that my family is a library or a shop, and I'm just stock taking. What books do I want more of? What books aren't selling well, and I'm ready to hand them on to, you know, Goodwill or something. So I really come at the vision of that as fairly non-emotional, because I'm not looking for being clouded by my own wounding and projections. I'm simply wanting to survey the land. So when I talk about what's not working, what I'm talking about for me is, where is it feeling hard, but like hard in a way that I'm like, this is just so not working. This is too hard. Like,
and hard in a way where you know that actually there could be a better structure here.
Right.
Like, I know this feels hard because I don't have the right structure.
Right.
Not just, I know this is hard because I don't want to feel these human emotions.
Good point too. You are on fire tonight. So I'm looking at more my experience, because motherhood is a top value of mine, as I'm sure it will be for all of our listeners, is there's a level of ease that comes with that, because there's a level of mastery that has come with a top value, and that is the same for anybody's top value. It doesn't matter what it is. Mine happens to be family. God bless my soul. Which means I know what it feels like to feel fulfilled even when it's imperfect, and what it feels like to feel satiated even when it's not perfect, and what it feels like to go, no, I've got this shit, we're good. So if it's not that, then I'm going, no, there's something that has to change here. So let me look at that. So I just want to look at what is, because really for me, I think that motherhood should feel relatively effortless, not in the point where I'm like, oh, my life's so great and I'm skipping around like rainbows and everything, but a sense of ease with, I've got this. This is working. We're good here. Not a sense of I'm strung out, wrung out, overwhelmed to the point of not knowing who I am anymore. Not that. I know that doesn't have to be a reality. And I know that I can gain as much fulfillment and sense of self out of motherhood as I perceive I lose. So if that's not in equal balance, if not tipped more, you know, towards fulfillment, then it's opposite, that I know something's not working there. How would you explain it?
Yeah, much like that it's really about looking at the whole, everybody in the family, about the unit, about how we're flowing with each other, and also how we're flowing in the home, and where my kids are also at, like developmentally, like is there something that I'm not accounting for and that's why it's feeling hard right now? Or is there an area where somebody could be stretched more to help us all
to
work
step
as a
up
unit? Yeah, like, so for instance, like my 7-year-old, am I stretching him enough to be able to grow the family as well?
Yeah.
And how are everybody's needs feeling met right now? Like, how am I feeling within myself, and how can I see each person within the unit feeling within themselves right now, so that there is a level of respect for the individual, for each individual and their growth and their interests, and of course my own. Because like you said, like, if you've got to the point of feeling completely wrung out and overwhelmed, you've missed your own boundary.
It's not working.
Yeah. So the idea of creating these kinds of audits is really so that you know that point within yourself, and you know that point at which something has to change because it's no longer working. And you'll hit this, quite often, I think, in the early years, where you know that maybe co-sleeping is no longer working anymore, or you need to change things up so that you're not always the one who wakes up to the baby in the night, or there's some additional care needed for, a child who is needing more stimulation and you can't provide that right now. Whatever it is, maybe you need to become honest with yourself and see where where the ideals or fantasies that you might have had for yourself are no longer true for who you're becoming. And so what do you now need? that means that there could be an identity shift that's happening for you that you need to create space to be with as well and to move through. So it's kind of how it looks for me as well.
Okay. So when you've done your stock take of what's working and what's not, it allows you to survey the land so that you can get clear on where you're focusing your intention or intention. I think you kind of touched on it. But then what we want you to do is then write down or put in a table each person's name within the family. And you may choose to include your partner or not include your partner. It's entirely up to you. You could just do your children if that's what you would like to do. And then, in Bridget's words, reckon who they are and where they're at and where they can be better supported or stretched. Do you want to talk about what that means for you?
So for that, and so I think a lot about probably my 4-year-old who, classic middle child, they kind of tend to get squished.
I wish it wasn't like a thing, but it is.
It appears to be a thing.
Yeah.
So my middle child also probably has the most challenges with regulation as well. So she's one that I'm looking at fairly regularly in terms of what does she need to feel connected to herself and how can I scaffold around her to support that, while also ensuring that she is cultured in the self-responsibility that I want her to have in our family and that I expect from her 7-year-old brother. That I don't discount the fact that it's actually often really hard to get her to do the cleanup, like to get her to flip into like what I need from her because of her brain. But ensure that I'm, for example, supporting her to be able to contribute and it not just mean that, oh, don't worry about it, it's easier to not get her to, you know what I mean? Because I'm letting her down and I'm letting everybody else in the family down if I skim over that. So that would be an example of seeking where both I need support for that child and where I can then stretch her. But I need to make sure that she's not hungry, that she's not too tired, that she's not all of these other things that are already going to limit her capacity to be stretched. And same with my 7-year-old as well, as looking at, is what I'm asking reasonable? How can I give him agency in what I'm asking? What's a system that's going to support him to stretch himself in alignment with his values and not me enforce the stretching through the projection of my own values onto him? So how can we kind of collaborate on what that stretching looks like? Because I know that when I hear myself say to him, it's not my job, that's then, we need to be having more conversations earlier about expectations, contribution, all of that stuff, because I want it to be a collaborative family where I can feel nourished by it, not just the nourisher. Yeah.
I hear you, amen. What does it mean, do you think, to reckon who your child is?
So for me, I mean, I don't know if you notice this, I'm sure you do, but your children, they just seem to transform like so quickly as they grow, and like their interests go intense and super laser focused for a while, and they just, it seems like they've shifted again to something else. And so it's keeping track of what that is and seeing what brings a sparkle in their eye right now and how I can show up for that and be a reflection of that so that I help them and their personality develop in connection with their soul, right? Because they're looking to us as like God, and if God doesn't approve of them, how can they approve of themselves, right? So for me, that recon or that kind of audit is looking at what their values are showing me, like what is lighting them up right now, what's life showing that they're spending most of their time doing, how can I show them that I care about that, how can I show them that I think that that's meaningful, at the same time as, of course, ensuring that they can also contribute beyond that to the family. But it's just an observation practice of noticing like where they're spending their time, their energy, what they're wanting to talk to me about, and practicing really having that spaciousness to value that too with them.
So knowing where they're at and how they can be better supported and stretched, that's a question that we ask ourselves.
Yeah, and seeing where they're struggling. So seeing where they might be struggling socially, seeing where they might be struggling behaviorally as well, like sibling dynamics in particular, like what sibling is, you know, where's the niggles at, for example, who maybe needs to be stretched in terms of friendship dynamics a little bit. Who can I put around them maybe that would help awaken something in them that I can see is a little dormant, for example. And where can I see them feeling like, you know, my son sometimes will be like, oh, it's too hard, like, you know, the dishwasher. My instant reaction is like, well, I haven't given you enough things in. You know, it's like if it's feeling too hard or it's feeling overwhelming, how do we chunk it down but also build you up to meet more as well? Because if it just feels hard this little bit, then you need more skills to be able to break that down and for that to feel achievable, and then broaden. Because I often think, you know, children can contribute so much and can do so much and derive a lot of self-worth out of their ability to contribute. But if we take that opportunity away, they can also just as easily become very happy to receive as well, and very happy to have everything done for them, which I think lets them down. So, yeah, just seeing where those edges are with each child as they get older particularly and they become more capable, I think is important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I actually just love having this conversation and just having the refresher and the reminder.
I think it's easy too when we're kind of operating on autopilot that we can like miss like things, like miss, and also sometimes if our life is busy, it can be so much easier to just do things. But you know, I don't think it helps them to, I mean, and this is from a void myself, because my dad, I just feel like my dad just used to pick up after us.
Yeah, you've said this many times.
Yeah. And so even my mum and I were talking about it, like it was really his way of showing his love. It was really an expression of love for him. But I can see how for my brother and I, we could have like done more, you know?
Do you see that as detrimental to your life though?
I don't know. Maybe I do a little. I mean, I don't know that it was, because we were also like teenagers, and I remember working a lot, and it wasn't like I wasn't sitting on my ass. You know, I was working and stuff. But I just really would like my kids to be able to see beyond themselves. You know, like see beyond their immediate need to what other people might need.
Yeah, I get that.
And so I think the house is a great training ground for that.
Maybe it's a great training. Sometimes I wonder, are we ever going to get there?
Yeah. And then also like, and is it, at what point do you just go, oh, it's too hard? Like just.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do that wrestle between what is developmentally
realistic.
Yeah, versus I'm asking my children to develop aspects of the self, which I'm not saying they can't be developed, because I also recognise that there's potentiality in anything that we're exposed to, right?
Yeah.
Versus what I know there's plenty of adults around us who do not have the capacity for. But is that because they're underdeveloped?
In that.
Yeah, because the adult is underdeveloped? Or because the child's underdeveloped and not ready? You know what I mean?
I know, and it's a wrestle. And then also I kind of go back to like my mum's story, and like the fact that, you know, she was like 5 and like making all of her like brothers and sisters, like her 11 brothers and sisters, you know, like lunches. And like there was no indulgence. But then this part of me is like, damn it, you're capable. Like, but then the other part of me is like, but I also don't want you to have this emotionally wounding experience.
You have to be capable. Yeah, no, I know. It's always something I wrestle with too. And I laugh at myself, but I find myself going, do you know when I was your age?
Yeah.
And I'm sure I hated every bit of that when I was little. And yet I can't help. I'm like, do you know when I was your age?
Oh, I think there's a part of that just comes in when you feel a sense of entitlement. You know, like it's, when you hear an edge, there's an edge of entitlement or an edge of kind of like inability to see wider. You just kind of like to give that little reminder sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. I often think about this in terms of education, funnily enough. Like even as we were going through this, I'm like, yeah, okay, I could actually take better stock of sibling relationships and what they actually need, because I largely just kind of step back and let that play out however it needs to play out and only mediate if it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
But I could have a level.
That's not true. You mediate a lot. Do I? I think you do.
Oh,
I think you do.
Maybe my radar's just off.
I think you do a fair bit. I know from a neurobiology point of view, the idea is that parents really only step in if there's about to be blood. Like
well, I probably step in a fair bit before that.
Yeah, you step in a fair bit before that. Because in terms of like the family unit and the way the kids are setting each other up to feel what they feel, and the siblings are trying to work out infatuations and resentments and order, and there's so much unseen stuff that parents can't really understand, that there's a different language that children are trying to establish and integrate. And so there's wisdom, you know, in their conflict, and
I totally get that.
them, but then also obviously,
and also to handle it. Like I also just think there's a certain skill set in being able to, you know, like water off a duck's back. You can only do that out there if you've learned that skill in here. Yeah. Because otherwise you're mortally wounded out there.
So true. Yeah, if you try to make your kids super, super supported and, you know, have all of this peace inside the home, and you don't allow sibling conflict, or you shut it down really quick, the conflict will just come outside.
Comes outside, and they don't then have any type of support, safe space or skills for handling that. So I don't see it as better. I think I do reflect on my child's values a lot, and I always ask myself, outside of the mainstream schooling system, how can I support those? So as you know, we do a shit ton of extracurricular activities, but that really only comes about because I'm like, okay, what do you need here for me to offer you support or nourishment towards that thing that's meaningful for you? So that's how we ended up at drama, because I could see my daughter had this crazy personality and she was bottling it up in certain settings. I'm like, great, okay, so I need to put you around a group of crazy drama people so that you realise there's a whole nother way to be that you're currently not exposed to.
And you have permission to be that because you can see it around you.
Right, and that it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. You know, and well, my son this year is he top age under 16s, and in the team that he's in, he has to work on his running, on his movement, and it's largely always been an issue for him. He's this long, lanky kid that, you know, hasn't had a lot of spring, and you know, that level of, I think, training that kids get in something like little aths just hasn't translated for him. And I also think big kids, it is harder. You got a lot of limb and a whole lot of ligament that's doing crazy stuff sometimes. So for him and my daughter, I've just organised for them a running coach so that they can have private one-on-ones together and work on movement, just micro movement to get better. I'm like, okay, so that's a way that I can help you because I don't have that skill set. Yeah. So how do I buffer that so that you still get to achieve what you want to achieve, as opposed to me not offering the opportunity to put someone in your pathway that can offer you the next leg up.
And also the process of like handing that over to them without attachment to what they're going to get out of it, how long they do it for. Yeah. You know, like it's theirs to do what they will with, just like any kind of extracurricular, and to trust, much like the morphing of values, trusting that they've got what they needed from that, and that has led to this other thing. Yep. And that it's not like, you've committed to this and you said this, and you just allow the morphing of like, and kind of like this, if you consider like the growth of the brain, and you know, you're considering like these little like neural pathways kind of developing up the hippocampus and all the way to the prefrontal cortex, like the child's personality is kind of creeping up this special kind of tree of life, I suppose, and that every little like juncture is meaningful for them. And it's not for us to know what the right length of time is to do that thing, or what the right path is, but to just offer it as best we can.
I love that. The only thing that I would pin to that is both my husband and I have a huge value on work ethic and impeccability with your commitment. So yes, there's no long-term plan, but if you've committed to signing up to basketball for a season, then that entire team of people are relying on you.
Totally.
And it's not okay to say, I don't feel like it today. So because I don't feel like it, who gives a shit about the other 10 people?
Yeah, totally.
So I totally agree with what you're saying, because they will morph and change. Cool, that's no worries, whatever, whenever you want to pick it up and drop it off. But if you've made a commitment,
it's about being with
you stick with that commitment.
It's about being with, developing the skill of being impeccable with your word, and your word is committing to a season. 100%,
and the accountability that comes with that. And that comes from, I can recognise I didn't come from a sporty family, and so we kind of, my sister and I kind of floated around between all sorts of different extracurriculars when we were younger, and I was pretty flaky Jake. Like, I just tried things like, self-esteem and stuff came in, and I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I can remember both my parents actually towing a really hard line with me on, that's fine, but we've paid for a term, you've committed to a term, whatever it is, that commitment you're following through on. And I never wanted to follow through on any of the commitments as a kid, ever, I can tell you. But my parents were hardcore on it. And now I look back and go, thank you, because I am incredibly impeccable with commitment. I wouldn't have been if they'd just gone, okay, no worries. You don't have to think about any consequences, anyone outside of you.
Totally.
You don't have to follow through on anything in your life, honey. Yes, you do.
which is a little bit of like, there's an edge of like New Age spirituality which just says, follow your bliss, and like I just didn't feel like it today, and so I just didn't, which that's that flakiness, right?
No, totes. So that's the one thing that I often reflect on, because I can remember and put myself in the body of the child who didn't want to do it. But it wasn't even because I didn't want to do it, it was because I know my self-worth and esteem was horrendous. And so I didn't feel like I could show up well enough in whatever I had decided in my head was good enough. So I just didn't want to deal with disappointment.
Yeah, which is a big difference.
So if I don't want to deal with disappointment, I don't want to end up disappointed or disappointing, because I was already disappointing enough, then how about I just don't do that thing, and then I won't have to feel disappointed.
So I don't have to feel it. Yeah.
And so it's a funny thing for me, because I'm so grateful for my parents that they pushed me through that, because I had to, when we're talking about stretching, I had to work that out for myself. That is a skill set I still employ as an adult today. But also I can recognise that when a child says to me, I don't want to do that, that I'm going, I wonder if you're not feeling worthy right now. I wonder if you have in your head that it's perfect or it's not worth doing. And how do I get you more comfortable with failure? And how do I get you more comfortable with showing up imperfectly? Because sometimes we're all a bit shit. And how do you show up with a group of people, because that's an intimacy skill, with your not good enoughness, and have that be good?
And still be there with that.
Right. Be good is shitty language, but be a comfortable, relatively comfortable space for you to be. I see that as a total intimacy skill that I had to work out. So I also don't think that it's just, I don't want to do that thing, because I think the commitment to self, to soul, to the growth that's required in that, and the commitment to other people and connection and community are huge values for me. I know that they fuel a life. So, and they're all intimacy skills. So
it's true. It's so true.
I just really think when it comes to commitment and impeccability, sometimes we don't want to fight the fight because we're like, oh, it's too hard, they don't want to, blah, blah, blah. I think it's probably deeper than that.
And sometimes also I think, that we've got to admit to ourselves too that like it requires us to stretch into our own discomfort, and often there'll be our own childhood wounding there too, of like feeling left out or feeling not good enough or feeling like no one's going to pick us for the team, you know, or feeling like we're always benched or whatever that is.
Which is why I don't turn up to anything. But really, at the end of the day, I don't want to rehash it, but I'm like, at the end of the day, that's just an intimacy skill, because I decided I was perfect and therefore worthy for people to see me. Or not perfect, please don't let anyone see you. That is not a healthy way to live.
No, well, it means that your world becomes so much smaller and contracts because you only make yourself safe when you're like this.
Right. So I just think that when we're talking about scaffolding, sometimes the pathway to commitment can be a way to really get have some, I don't know, tangible steps on our children's intimacy skills with themselves and how they present themselves in the world. And that's the invitation even more than the thing that you're doing. Like my third, who has a body that does not work in sport, bless her cotton socks, just loves and wants to play basketball. She's by far the worst player here in my house, worst player on the team. But she's just delighted to be there, to do a like rah-rah song with her friends at the beginning and at half time, and to have a clap, if she happens to do, something like an amazing defensive move on the court or something. And that's what she turns up for. So who gives a shit if it's basketball or it's, I don't know.
It's the process.
Right.
It's the process of showing up.
It's a process of showing up, of learning who you are even when you're imperfect, of contributing to a team, of teamwork, of communicating, of finding your voice, like so many skills. So, and we have the discussion with her, you want to play basketball? And yes, I do. Okay, it's a whole term, it's a whole season. Yes, I do. We've got to get up even when you don't want to go. Sometimes that's going to mean you miss out on screen time.
Yeah.
Or, because we have allotted times for screen time, and often if it's a morning game, it's going to clash with those screen times. So you might miss out on screen time. Do you want it badly enough that you want to do that? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Let's do that. So, I mean, that was a bit of a waffle, but I do think commitment is important. Then the last point that we have for the 3 keys to your family growth visioning is, what is your vision for your family as a whole and for each family member by the end of 2021? Like if you think ahead and you go, you know what, this year I would love to dedicate this to this person. I would love for them to experience this. What would that be? What would that be? So I think that is a really beautiful thing, to recognize and reconcile what your vision is for your family for the next 12 months and what your vision is, or what your, it's like having an intention word that you're continuously coming back to and aligning your actions, thoughts, processes, money to, that's towards that particular vision. So
yeah, I love that.
I really think that's a beautiful invitation to, and I actually don't, if I hadn't have done this or started this 2 years ago for Lola, there's no way I would be doing the diagnosis pathway that we have been. Like if I hadn't taken stock and gone, you know what, this isn't working and I'm sick of the bullshit, I'm going to put in place by the end of this year, I want to know a diagnosis. Of course that didn't happen. It's a continuation of process, but it's a process. And this year again, I'm like, I need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to have a clear set of structures put in place for you. If I hadn't started that, it wouldn't have happened. The education system wasn't doing it.
Yeah. She would have just been.
Yeah, no other family member, my husband included, was doing it, because it was like I was the crazy mother. I'm the only one that could see this, or perceived, until there was scientific evidence, and I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So having a vision for your family and each family member, I think, is really important. Like if you could focus one thing for them, if you could wish and want and hope and desire an area of growth for each of them and for your family as a whole, what would you like to dedicate 2021 to? And how do you continuously return to that word or that vision when you're feeling, wayward or making a decision?
Have you chosen a word for the year?
No, because I haven't done our process yet.
Okay.
And I really, I want to do the ceremony tomorrow, and then, which I know for you guys has already happened when this podcast comes out. I like to follow our process.
Yes.
So I wanted to do the ceremony, say goodbye to last year. And then I wanted to work through the workbook because I do think it's really good. I mean,
me too.
The reason we created it is because you and I do it.
Yeah.
So
I look back at my one from last year and I go, oh gosh, funny that family connection and fun had to happen in lockdown for how many months we were in lockdown for.
That is funny. Have you achieved, have you done a tick off from your last year's manifesting?
Yeah, I looked at mine wasn't pulled down to single outcomes. Mine was more subject areas and moving towards outcomes within each of them. So yes, there's not an area that I haven't fulfilled. They're all fulfilled. If I look at and I even remember you, me, and Amelia actually when we caught up at the end of last year. No, end of 2019, and we talked about we were in this process, and I was I definitely want greater intimacy with my husband, and that was a really conscious one, and that's just been exponential, which has been amazing. Yeah, there's not really an area. The only one that I'm really holding my feet to the fire with is career now, which really wasn't something that I had on my list last year.
So that makes sense then.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It is cool.
No, I was really specific to the point where it was even a dark Kia Carnival
Oh,
yeah,
right.
I was
cool.
That specific.
Yeah.
There's only one that hasn't come true for me in my list from last year. It's New York Times bestselling author. I don't even know if that's
is that what you use to pull yourself through?
Yeah, it is.
Through the heartache of rewriting the book.
It sits on my wall.
Yeah. Yeah. If not now, when, right? It's there.
Who knows? I'm still going to keep it on there. I don't even really care about the best-selling thing. It's just I'm such a book fiend that the pinnacle of that, the pinnacle of that seems like the New York Times best-selling, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of looked into it, and you can buy your way into it. Did you know that?
I didn't know you could buy your way into that.
Yeah, for 150 to 250,000 US.
Oh, there must be a lot of people that's how a lot of them have got that title then.
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, the other way is you already have a certain record of, anyway, there's whole other pathways. I will not be paying a house deposit. And it may never happen, and I'm okay with that, but I want to still plant the seed for it. Because if not that, what else, right?
Yeah.
Where else does it land? If you shoot for the moon, would you end up on a star?
Yeah, I love that. I love that saying.
So I think it's worth being specific. And I love that you can just tick. Wow, tick.
I'm being specific this year.
So good. I think I'm trying to think what else I had on there. Car, financial goals, book. I can't even remember now. Such a good feeling just to tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
So definitely.
And it keeps you focused again. It keeps you it keeps you aware of your habitual patterns that lead you not to those things and how to take the action to lead to those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I also don't think I've taken the action to lead to being a New York Times bestselling author. So that could be a flaw in my planning.
But that's it, right? Reflecting and feedback.
Yeah, it is.
This podcast is brought to you by Honey Club and Reimagining Motherhood, your spaces for intimacy and feminine embodiment, and conscious parenting and inspiring motherhood. Come join us at julietanner.love and bridgetwood.life. Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Tara Arcabelli from the Household Advisor. So she always heralds and leads our February in Soul-Driven Motherhood, which is all about how we create the space in which we rise, become the person that we're wanting to manifest in the year ahead, but also in a really beautiful way, learn from and say goodbye to the human and the space that she represents in the year that's preceded. So today, the conversation that we're going to be having is how representative your physical home is of your emotional, mental, and physical body as your home, and what one space reflects about the other, what we can learn from the space in which we and our families live, and what you might want to change in order to really bring manifest what you're seeking to achieve this year. So, Tara, I'd love for you to just say hello, and then we'll run in with our spiel, and we would love to then really have this conversation with you.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you both.
We're so happy to have you. We're so excited.
So, Bridgie, would you like to read Tara's bio, and then we'll kick it off from there? Because I normally do the spiel here of please.
You normally do the spiel.
I know. I'm messing up the system. So, all right, let me dive in with that. So we're all not on a loose hook going, this feels weird. We would love you to join our newsletter space, where we just let you know what's happening in the world once every sort of few weeks. All the podcasts, all the links, everything you've missed, everything that's happening in our world, so that you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive deeper. And you are able to connect with More Nourishing the Mother during your weeks, so that you don't miss a beat by dropping in your email address at nourishingthemother.com.au.
Beautiful. So Tara is the household advisor. She's a mentor, facilitator, and holistic organizational specialist. Tara is drawn to homes, spaces, and the environment that people live in. Each day, Tara works to better understand herself, her relationships, her home, and her spaces, and helps her clients do the same. Tara helps women cultivate a home environment that nourishes their soul by unpacking their household patterns, habits, and behaviors. Tara helps women get unstuck and come home to themselves. And we've got to say, yes, she does, because last year, you and I, Jules and I, both invited Tara into our very intimate spaces that are our homes. And what Tara was able to tug at in terms of our own habitual patterns and threads and vulnerabilities and emotional stories that our homes represent was really just beautiful and at times confronting, wasn't it, Jules?
Yeah, 100% it was. But I'm so grateful for that time and that space. And that did radically change. Not that we knew back then we were going to have the year that we had, but now I can see how radically that offered me space mentally, emotionally, but also just as a family, because we're a family of 6 in a really tiny 3-bedroom home with a single living space. It's really small. So the area that we focused on, Tara, was my children's bedrooms, because I just could not handle the clutter and it was hard for me to be around and in, and hard for them. And we totally somehow magically made it a minimalist space, which I didn't think was possible in a, old retro 60s home with no storage, and really created, I suppose, the essence that I wanted all of us to bathe in those spaces, which was to feel clear and clean, and that sense of, I feel really good here, rather than there's more stuff to distract my mind than what my body can handle. And look, I'm really thrilled to say that has absolutely stayed that way for us, and led the way to me really seeing manifest then the new bunks and spaces for my kids' beds and the wardrobe installations in everybody's bedroom that I can't imagine I would have foreseen had I not first created the space for which that became a then manifest reality. So their bedrooms are still have clear floors with only these little, I bought another set of suitcases for the other bedrooms, these like metal suitcases.
They're gorgeous.
It's so great. And so my girls just have their 2 suitcases with their Barbies and little bits and pieces in their bedroom, and that's it. That's all that's on the floor. And that feels magnificent still. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was such a pleasure to work with you two. And I was going to say, do you think that set you up really well going into what we obviously didn't know we were going to go into a lockdown, but could you have imagined having experienced 2020 with all of that sort of clutter and stuck and feeling
no way. I mean, I think it was all divine intervention in a way, wasn't it? Because they were the two spaces. I mean, I really only got my bedroom and the living room outside of that. So let's say it's not a big space, but my bedroom and the living room, pretty well sorted, kitchen, pretty well sorted. It was my kids' bedroom that were just, I was so stuck with and on and could not work out how I could feel good walking into that space and how I could shift perceptions and views for this to be a really beautiful choice rather than what it looked like, which was I don't know, making do with the best we could, which it wasn't. It was always a conscious choice for me to live in this space, and that I just couldn't see that manifest in these spaces. And I mean, my two eldest kids often would sit on, because we then bought double beds for the big kids, would often sit together on the double bed in one of the bedrooms next to each other just to work in a clean space that no one else was in. And I just thought, my goodness, like there's no way that we could have homeschooled with a tiny person, like a little 2 to 3 year old, plus a primary schooler, plus 2 high school kids in 3 bedrooms and 1 living space, plus my husband home full-time working, plus me working through that. Like that's
a lot.
5 out of 6 people trying to work out how to function as best as they possibly can. And that was the last of the space physically that was stopping ease and flow. So I can't imagine that we could have created the experiences that we did have as a family had we not had bedrooms that were extremely functional and inviting as a space. And I think just, you know, good juju, they just like the energy in them just flows when it's so clear, you know. So I think it was divine intervention. Perfect.
Good timing. How did you go, Bridget? What did you think? How did you go with your office?
Oh, so good. I mean, the office, it was a funny one. There's a lot of resistance for me with the office and a lot of like distraction, and I was finding it hard. I mean, even you can see like even in the videos that are in Soul Driven Motherhood that that's trying to showcase the transformation. I can even see it in the way I was holding my body, like just in kind of the heaviness of sorting through my office, because for me it was a representation of like so much half-finished stuff, or, you know, so many notebooks and so much books and so much learning that felt a little dense for me. And having you in there and having your perspective as we were going through it all was just so powerful, because I got to see myself differently, and I got to understand my habits in a new way, which has really informed how I view that space. And I'm still working through it. I'm still finding myself choosing to work in my bedroom more than I'm choosing to work in that space. So there's still some resistance there, but just being able to be aware, because this is the thing, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Tara, that if you don't work through what has got you there in terms of the way you use your spaces, then they just go back to the way they were. It's a little bit like somebody who tries to like go on a diet and lose weight. Unless you deal with the underlying emotions behind why you have the diet that you have, then you'll just swing back to where you were before, after that initial kind of, you know, whatever it is.
100%. Well, that's it. Someone can come in and do it all for you.
Yeah.
And then you'll just revert back. So and that's why I say I'll have you seeing it differently, because then we're looking at what's going on. So we're seeing the surface, but we're also then looking underneath at what habits and behaviors are driving you to do that, to not make those decisions, or to make those types of decisions, or to avoid. And as you were saying, you only know what you're comfortable with, like what you've grown up with, like that dynamic. And a lot of your organizational skill set is learned. You're not really taught it in school. You're not really taught it in university. It's whatever was modeled to you in the home. And it's not like we live with, I mean, obviously you could have some housemates and things like that, but you're not living in 10 or 15 different family dynamics, like to get that sort of perspective. So I say that all the time, because every time I work with someone new, I go, wow, so there's another way to do this, and there's another way to do this, and I like that, and they do that better. And it's really, really fascinating. But you're right, it's all the habits and behaviors and the neural pathways and everything that you've learned and had role model to you. And then whatever you've picked up, you're then role modeling to the next generation. Yeah. So it's that beauty of that awareness of saying, okay, I really like this about my childhood home and I'm going to continue that and teach it to my children. And there's a few things here that I wish, like, how can I do those sort of differently? And I often then find too, when you go into a home, it's those areas and those rooms that are telling you where that work is.
Yeah.
But unless you're really sitting with it and having someone sort of help you and sort of facilitate you through it, because you don't know any different, it's very hard to see it. And like, even for me, I found in 2020, the gift of lockdown is that I can see most of my stuff, but there's still some that I can't. But lockdown was a totally different experience. Like, we'd never been there. Like, I'd never seen my house play that sort of role, that intense role. So it had me looking at my spaces at a different level as well and going, oh, there's more here. Like, this is a one-stop shop. This has become like our bubble. We've got 2 businesses running here. We've got a kinder running. We've got a school running. Like, it has to play a different purpose. So what do I need to change here? So I too, like, I've sort of been through it. I sort of went through it with you and I went through it with some clients, and then I feel like I did the best, like, deep dive, because I feel like your home is one of the best training grounds, because you can do it and you can do it within that home, and what you learn from that you can then take kind of out and into your life, because it's almost like different rooms of the house are different areas of life as well, I feel. So
can you expand on that a little? And like, what do you mean by that when you say different homes are different, almost like different areas of your life?
Different depending on, like, people will have certain rooms that are harder than others. So when we looked at you and your sort of your office, and I see that as being sort of that career and business area. So if you're sort of stuck, or sometimes it can be financial as well. So you could be sort of stuck there. If it's, sometimes like kitchen, it can sometimes be about like food and even entertaining and the social aspect, and even like the playroom. Like, that was a big one for us. We had a sort of a big playroom, but I opened it right up during lockdown because it was driving me crazy. But I was in that transition of my daughter being in kinder, sort of coming out of that toddler phase, and like getting rid of baby gates and things like that. So as I did that, like, everyone would be like, oh, that's quite simple. But the emotion for me was like, oh, are we not going back? Like, are we not having another child? Like, is this the next part of my life? And I feel like I had to clear that in order to be like, okay, we're through that. I'm closing that door and I'm sort of moving on. And for me, this year is our my husband's office, because as you were saying, I've been working from kind of all over the house all of the last year, like wherever everyone was home. So like, the kids have their own beautiful school desk and school station, and my husband's got his area, but I was kind of just all over the house. And this year I'm like, no, I'm ready to take up space. I'm ready to dive into this. So now I need to create a space for me that's inspiring and nourishing, and bringing in all those words that I've pinpointed for myself this year. And I need to then create that to help sort of drive and facilitate my creativity and where my business is going to go. So there's lots of, laundry, there are all sorts of different dynamics going on, and too, depending on what your sort of generational patterning is and the stories that you're carrying. But there's always sort of lots of common themes and things like that when I go into houses, and I'll often be able to say, oh, so where are you sort of stuck? Oh, that's quite representative of those piles, because often, as I say, piles are just unmade decisions. So in those areas of your life where you're not making those decisions, it is that resistance. So it's represented in your stuff, but it's also representative of, like, it's your life. It's been, reflected back. So as I said, during lockdown, I really had to sit there and be like, okay, so what are my spaces going to teach me? And we were pretty well set up in terms of, I had the house it wasn't a huge change because we both worked from home and the children are home quite a lot. But it was still kind of a deep dive into what's the next step on the other side of this, and how can I make that sort of more comfortable, and how can I make us all sort of thrive? So then bringing the kids in, like, what do the kids need on top of, okay, so my husband's needs, what are my needs? What does my son need for school? And then what does my daughter need for kinder? And then making all of our rooms and literally every square inch of our home fit that. And I feel like we did quite a good job of it.
I must comment on that in terms of how do I make this space work for my kids, because this can be the kind of thing that the kids can easily be forgotten, right? The kids can be like, you know, not really considered amongst the desire to sort the home. But yet I know with Jules and also with me and with my kids, you came in and spent time observing them and really understanding what was important to them, so that any change that was made was done collaboratively, so that also made it sustainable and it made it something that they could contribute to and feel respected in. And that is also where I think we've got longevity with the changes that you've made, because you came in and helped Hugo set up a space for his Lego, which he still uses. And you helped organise all of our cupboards and Sylvie's craft, which she still uses and knows where to find everything and helps organise. And so because they were able to co-create those new spaces and felt empowered in doing that, that's also made it far more easeful for me and my husband to be able to continue with that, because they're part of that, not just kind of, you know, brought along absent-mindedly, you know.
Correct. And I think it's important because there's so much of like you're imprinting all the time on them. So you want them to be contributing and co-creating with you. And even yesterday, I was writing down some notes for our chat, and Luca came down, he's 7, and sat down next to me, and we had a really long conversation about what was the experience for you, and what would you say about our spaces, and what did you learn about our spaces? Like I ran through sort of all the questions I'd been talking to you about to get a really good perspective, because I worked with both of them, like to really because they're at such different stages, with Eva being in 3-year-old kinder and Luca being in grade 1, like there's quite the age gap. So I had to facilitate an environment where she could explore, and hers became, because we could only go for a walk around the block, that was at one point all we could do. She loved nature and flowers, so we would pick flowers every day, and then we built her a flower garden. So the whole front of our house now is a flower garden, so we were bringing that in, and then Luca got his workstation, and I guess worked with him every day to make sure that he could learn, like it was the best environment for me. So for him, so talking to him, what do you need? Because he was in the living area, so in the communal area. Do you need us to be quiet? Do you not want anyone to be in there? Like, how do we want to set it up? And then he got all his Lego creations that he'd made during lockdown, and he had them lined up on the fireplace, and he made like a Lego trophy when we had a competition one day, and I haven't had the heart to take them down. Like they're all still sitting up on our mantelpiece, because it's just such a beautiful reminder of that time. And he said to me yesterday when I asked him, he said, oh, well, most people think being at home is really boring, but if I learned anything last year, it's that there's so much to do at home. There's just so many ways to entertain ourselves. We've just got to look. We've just got to kind of look outside. That, you know, people just think that you just go home and you should watch screens, but he's like, there's just, you know, there's so much. Like we have a pool, and obviously in the middle of winter it's freezing, but the kids were doing leaf races and we were fishing and just getting really creative with what we had. And then too, I think looking a lot at then regulation. So, and I remember Julie and your swing in your living room, and we have a swing in our backyard, and Eva every day at about 4:30 without fail would just get up from whatever she was doing, and she would walk outside and she'd spend half an hour swinging. I just said to my husband, it's been a big day, she needs to regulate. And I just really made sure too that we built that in, and for my son, and then what each of us then needed as well. So yeah, it taught me a lot. Yeah,
I'd love to reflect on that too, that was also one of my biggest joys, having you work with me and my kids. Was very kid focused in my house because it was their bedrooms, and the care and the presence and diligence with which you met each and every one of them to ensure that their needs, but beyond that the piece that was missing for me was how to reflect them in their spaces, because all I could see was what didn't fit for me and what made my nervous system uncomfortable, and what you saw, and I really think facilitated me beyond my projections and into really creating the space that I wanted for them, but couldn't see beyond my own nervous system
situation was their values. And that's still the case, right? Like my daughters still have their values of social friends, and my eldest, now we've moved things around, she loves plants, so she's like building in plants and vision boards. And my son, we did put the shelves up for his shoes so he could showcase those and hang his special basketball things up, like just really what seems like really simple additions, but actually I hadn't sat with or considered, and what personalizes that space. But beyond it's not even personalizing it. It was the fact of being very selective about what went on those walls, because it wasn't on floors, what went on the walls that would hit up their nervous system, brain, and hormonal pathways with their top values so that they stay inspired for longer. And that was deeply meaningful to me. So that also has remained a co-creation with them, which is, I always think I'm so grateful for that, because I wouldn't have seen it.
And how much do you think that that also helped your teenagers, particularly during lockdown, when it was a time of, for some teenagers, really, really challenging to their identity, because their identity is so much formed by their social interaction? Was having this space reflect them authentically help, you know, kind of help them to feel more connected to themselves, do you think?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I haven't spent time reflecting on it, but now you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, of course, you know, which is so great to have the space just to reflect on that.
Yeah.
I hadn't sat with it, but I don't have a question. Like, they chose to sit side by side, but they chose to be in their bedrooms to study. Like, the door was always open. We have an open door policy, but they always chose to be together within their bedrooms rather than out in my space in the lounge room, right? Which the walls are plastered with my top values. And they're like, I'd rather be in my own, thanks very much.
Yeah.
So, you know, now I'm reflecting on it, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. That would be stimulating and wholesome for their nervous system to be interacting with. Yeah, definitely. So, Tara, I know that we are going to be doing a couple of workshops with you in February in soul-driven motherhood. But what I would really love for you to talk about is just the reflection on the holistic part of what you do. I know we've talked on it, but what perhaps our listeners who may or may not be part of soul-driven motherhood and have deeper access to you, although of course they can connect with you, and we put all of that at the end of the podcast and in the show notes. So please make sure that you check out how to find Tara. But what is it that you think about when you think, what did your spaces teach you about you? What did you learn and what did you change? What is that riff on that, I suppose, that really speaks to you about why that's holistically so important when we're decluttering and creating space in our homes?
Well, I think for me, it's really, in essence, about seeing you. So really getting to see, when I go into a home, to see my client as they are. So to really see them in much the same way that in my house I see myself, and then getting to the bottom of what their desires are and what their values are, and then within that what they want their home and life to be off the back of that. Because I know that you talk a lot about getting to know, I guess, what lights you up and what you desire and what you value and what is important to you. And I think that societally at the moment, because we're sort of being bombarded with so much input and stimulus and consume more and have more and things like that, we sort of lose like the core of who we are and the essence of who we are. So, and when I say holistically, I'm not just going into your home to look at your stuff. Like, I'm going into your home to look at you, to see who you are, and then to see who each of those individuals are that live within that home, and where, you know, what their deepest desires are and what they want and what they're finding really, really hard and why they're finding that hard. And then I guess a part of that is then looking back as well. So it's looking at your sort of your lineage and what was role modeled to you and what you learned and what habits and behaviors and things like that often, like, you can't see it for yourself. Like, it's very hard to see it for yourself. And as Bridget said, you can hire as many, you know, cleaners and organisers and things like that can come in, but until you've actually addressed why you are making the decisions that you are making and why you have those behaviours or what those habits kind of are about, it's not going to change in the same way, if you know what I mean. There's not going to be that sort of deep change. So I like to think that it's a lot about spaces and items and decluttering and things, but it's much more about a deep dive almost into your psyche as to what is really going on and what is being represented in that. So it's going in and seeing you, it's feeling your energy, it's feeling those spaces, because I'm a very deep I'm a deep thinker, but I'm a very deep sort of feeler, and I can go in and just sort of sit with, in much as I was saying with your children, and just sit there and be like, what lights them up, what's important to them, because we all want to live in a beautiful, like a sanctuary that is building us up, because I feel like the outside world so much of the time is tearing us down. I'm not necessarily tearing us down, but it's telling us be this way or do that, or if you buy that, or if you have that, or if you look this way, but at the end of the day, we just want to be seen for who we are and loved for who we are and loved for all our quirks and what makes us unique. And I think there's such a relationship between that and your home. And I feel like too in 2020, for a lot, like that was an opportunity for people to really dive in and sit with themselves, because we didn't have the distractions. We couldn't, because, we could be basically busy and stimulated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of our lives. Whereas this was a beautiful opportunity to be like, okay, does this feel good? Like, is this environment that I am bathing in 24 hours a day feeling really good for me, or is it not? And if it's not, let's do something about it. Like, let's sit there. And I've had to sit with myself. There were things too that I didn't like that I've had to really grow through and work through. And it was brutal. Like some of those times, like the first lot of lockdown, not so bad. Second time in was really painful. Like every day, like I've just got to keep getting up and keep doing this and kind of keep facing. But as I said to you, when we cleared our playroom space, I was just like, what do I need to change? I need more space. I need more light. I need to feel like there's more flow. I need less stimulation, and particularly with the kids learning, the less stuff in your spaces, the less sort of overstimulated you become. And I was like, so what am I going to do? And a couple of times my husband turned to me and he said to me, what would you say to your clients? Do it. Don't complain about it. Just he just called me out on it. Like,
and I love that you say that, because even though this is your area of expertise, you're still facing the same stuff because you're still human.
100%. 100%. And he because I have to do it to him, so he will very much do it to me. And I'll say to him, what am I not seeing? What am I not saying? And we do come from very polar opposites, so very different. And I just think that is the greatest blessing almost there, because sometimes you'll say something and I'll be like, what? Like I can't even imagine that you would have done it that way, or that you'd have a space like that, or that your mum would have, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just so different. And I guess too, like when you're in those spaces 24 hours a day, and then you have 2 children as well with a bit of an input. Like my son's now old enough to, and my daughter does a little bit, she's 4, but my 7-year-old, or 7.5 now, is very happy to start turning it back on me. So all the things that I'm saying to him, and in particular too with my daughter, I started to notice that I was getting frustrated with her. Like she was leaving things around and losing things. Like she'd always be coming to me, oh, I've lost this, I've lost that. And I'm thinking, I'm an organizational specialist. Like, how are you losing this stuff? Like, what's going on here? And then I thought, but is a part of that too, that it's my skill set. So sometimes you because it's so natural to me, I'm then doing a lot of that for them, as opposed to then providing them with those skills. So I found with both of them, with her in particular, and she says it to me now, I said, we give everything a home. So like we have a home, we go home to our home, and then everyone knows where we are. So the same with your items. I say when you've finished with them, or they've finished for the day, we put them back in their homes, and then tomorrow when you want them, we put them back in our home. And we go and we know where they are. And then she'll actually say to me, oh, I lost that, Mummy. Oh, I didn't put it in my home, didn't put it in its home, and now I can't find it. Or she'll say, oh, you better put your earrings back in their home so you know where they are tomorrow. So that was beautiful with her. And then I also found too with my son in terms of grade 1, which he probably found a bit of that with Hugo, and the way that, you know, they're writing but setting out their pages, so their spaces, so structuring posters and rulers and things like that. And I was getting really quite frustrated, like it's not that hard to set out this space. And I thought, no, but I haven't sat there and taught him how to do that. So I looked, that was a huge change for him. And by the end of it, like I didn't have to tell, like he just sort of knew. But again, and then I started to think, well, if those are the little things, then what else are we teaching our children, if you know what I mean? And where are we gaining those skill sets from? And then I thought, wow, big picture, like whatever our parents taught us is pretty much what we've continued on. Yeah.
I love the language of the home. I think I'm going to start using that instead of let's tidy up or pack up or whatever. Let's find
a home for it.
Yeah, let's get back in its home. I really like that, Tara. I'm gonna borrow that one.
Please, no, please, because I always say to them, everything's got to have a home, a purpose, and a function. Otherwise, you need to make a decision about it.
I gotta write that down. Can you say that again, slower?
Everything has to have a home, a purpose, or a function, or you need to make a decision about it.
That's cool.
Because all those piles and all that clutter and all those stuck places are piles of unmade decisions.
I love that too.
I wrote that down too. You're like coming out with the gold today. Piles of unmade decisions. I loved that. As soon as you said, I was like, oh my God, yes, they are.
They are. They are. And I have to sometimes, like I just noticed with myself, and even when I was saying during lockdown and we cleaned that playroom and it took me a long time to do it because I just would stop myself when it started to get hard, or as I talk to my clients about it a lot, you get decision fatigue. So there's only a certain number of decisions that your brain can make in any day, and most people, by the time they've had breakfast, they've exhausted their brain. Like they've just made so many decisions. So if then you're trying to do this, you know, off the back of lockdown and things like that, I would just get to a point where I'd be just like, oh, I'm just going to shove that there. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to just make a pile. I'd just be like, no, my brain is now telling me it's had enough. And I want to make this decision once, and I want to make it well, because I don't want to have to make it again. And there are a few things about the kids' stuff that there was more of it than there needed to be, just because I hadn't really sat there. And then I thought, if I can't make this decision today, it sits there. I'll make it tomorrow, because it will annoy me so much that it's, you know what I mean? Like you just do it in a way that it doesn't ruin your experience, but it annoys you enough that you actually have to sit with yourself and be like, why can't I make a decision about this?
I love that you're making this point, because in fact, like just recently we hired a massive skip bin and we filled it in a week. But the amount of like the exhaustion that I felt mentally from going through our whole house and sheds and clearing stuff, it was intense. And I was like, I haven't actually really done anything, but the weight of like this stuff and the decision making feels really heavy. And it's because of all the stories that everything carries. And then also that decision making thing.
Absolutely.
And I think certainly working with you meant that my husband and I were both extremely ruthless. Between working with you and like, you know, doing the condo thing a number of times, it was so refreshing this time around to just be far more discerning rather than, oh, maybe, you know, and just again being a pile of unmade decisions that hide in pockets of the home and the shed, right?
100%. And it's a no. Like if you're unsure, I always say it's a no. And I always say I look at something and I go, okay, what am I feeling? Because there's so much about the work that I do in the home. What am I feeling here? Stop. Like the minute that your brain then kicks in, it's going to override it. And it's going to start saying, oh, but that cost me $50. And what if in 3 weeks I need it? And no, like what's your gut? Like what is that reaction? Do I love it? Do I value it? Is it a part of the life that I envision for myself? Yes, no, get rid of it and be really ruthless. But you need to be like in the sort of mindset to be able to do that. Like, you don't want to be doing it. I don't know, you've had the worst week, the busiest week ever, and then on that Saturday morning you decide to get up and sort of do it. Like, you've got to be quite intentional in about how you do it. So when I did our playroom space, I waited till the end of term, and then I knew I had 2 weeks with those school break, and I knew that no one was visiting because no one was allowed to visit. So there was no that expectation of, I'm going to shove that in the laundry, I'm going to shove, like, do you know what I mean? I'm going to pull it apart and then I'm just going to shove it in other spots. Like, I did it so we could still live. It would annoy me enough that I would constantly do it. But I was realistic in that it takes a long time, because you are facing yourself, you are facing your patterning, you are facing your lineage, you are facing everything that you know to be true. So you have to challenge every decision. There is a challenge of who you are, and then, like, what you want for your life. And so much of that is because, one, you've done it, it's comfortable, so it's part of your family dynamic, and a lot of it you've just inherited from other people.
I actually just love that so much, because the question I was going to ask you before was, what do you say for the person who's like, oh God, you know, the mess in my house annoys me, where do they start? But you just actually answered it already, like it was intuitively in those questions just then. And now my mind's gone blank, but I love the idea of, is this part of the life I envisioned, why can't I say that? Envisioned for myself or not, and making decisions from there. I just adore that. I've just done the rounds on a few of the cupboards, and I was cleaning out our games cupboard. And as you're saying that, I'm like, yes, that's true. Because even as I'm picking up the old boxes of shitty ass puzzles that my mum's given me from the op shop or something, because she loves a puzzle, you know, it's part of our family heritage. And I'm like, don't have the space for it. We don't really have the time for these enormous puzzles that get to stay out forever and a day. And I don't even know if this piece is missing from this, but there's this part of me that's like, you should hold on to that. You should have time for that. You shouldn't throw it out. It's still really good. It's good enough. Where could you put that? Your mum would be really sad if you threw that out. And even as I'm going, nah, it's not a truth for me. Not part of, nah, but I can see those bits ticking over. So as you were saying that, I was sitting with, oh yeah, in the games cupboard, I have to face myself.
It's everywhere. Pretty much every item you bring into your home is a decision you've made. And then you have to live with, was that a good decision? And then I also think that every item that you have takes up space. So it's taking up space. It's influencing the energy and the flow within the home. You need to look after it. You need to maintain it.
There's an enormous cost.
Clean it. There's a huge cost. Huge. And now too, and I don't like to say this, but when my clients say, oh, but what if it's a mistake? And what if I need it? Well, you know, a long time ago, we didn't have, you know, Kmart and Aldi and things like, do you know what I mean? Like, if you do make a mistake, I'm not saying throw out, you know, there's lots of things that we need to look at. You know, there's your treasured items and things like that we're a lot more careful about. But there's a lot of items in that home that you could go to get from Kmart tomorrow in a pinch that you would have, you know, it's not a problem. So, yeah, that's sort of how you need to kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Do you have a process that you apply when you're thinking about or talking to your kids about buying things? Because there actually is like an enormous amount of discernment that we should really be showing, almost like with a minimalistic kind of edge to it around like what comes in, because everything that comes in, doesn't just come in effortlessly. It then needs to be at some point disposed of, stored, you know, like there's a lot of like it's big. It's weighty.
It is, and I was saying, when I went through our playroom, like, my husband said, oh, you're generally pretty good, but he goes, I think when we had children, you might have just lost your perspective a little bit there, like, because there's just so much. If you get inundated with you need to have this thing and that thing, and I look back now and I think, oh, 3/4 of the stuff that we had we didn't probably need, and in that process, like, I sat with the kids for hours and hours and we went through it, and they see me do it all the time, and sometimes I think they think I'm going to throw everything out, and I don't, but that's also helped in when we do consume and when things come in, like, to say to them, do you value it? You see that it takes up space, you see that you've got to give it a home. If there's nowhere to put it, like if you can't envision a home for it, then what are you going to give up in order to bring that in? Yeah, because I'm very particular, and we only have certain sort of spaces within the home. I don't like lots of things on the floor. The kids have their toy boxes, and everything else is sort of Montessori open, so on shelving and things. But as it starts to overflow that, they go, oh, mummy's what's mummy going to throw out today? And I'm not going to throw it out. And then I also talk about who could, a couple of years ago, who could have, you could have benefited from this because someone else was letting go of it. So if we let go of this, do we have any friends? Do we have any neighbours? Can we take it to the op shop? Does the school need it? And things like that as well. So it's a lot of talking to them about
consuming. Yeah,
that's right. And it depends on, a lot of that too will be your patterning. So it will also depend on what they're exposed to and what you've grown up with, and sometimes you really have to kind of check yourself with a lot of that. Like I have to think, why is that okay? Or what, my husband thinks that's quite different to me, and kind of all, I guess, working together, because everyone, like, that dynamic is always changing and you're pushing everyone's buttons, and it's really interesting. And
amazing, that imprint, isn't it? Because even today, like, we went to the shops and my son walked into like this game shop, and he immediately like had to have this thing, and he was like, Mum, I promise I'll pay you back. I just really want this. And he's talking at 100 miles an hour, and I could hear the emotion in his voice, and I could feel the desperation in his body. And I said, Hugo, do you notice your voice right now? Do you notice how like your emotions are really strong and you just have this need that you have to have it? That means we're going to not get it right now. And we're going to take a couple of days, and you can think about it, and then you can bring your wallet back if it's what you really want. Because I don't think that this is a true decision for you right now. I think you've seen it and you want it and you just feel like you have to have it, but that's not the place to make a decision from. And it was really interesting because the same can be true of like the emotions that we kind of hold on to and get attached to about things in our home. To apply that even before it comes into the home is actually like far more empowering for both us and our kids.
And I say that to my son all the time. I said, well, why do you want that? Because it's going to make me happy. I feel excited. I feel good. And then I can see, like, I'll stop him and he'll roll his eyes like, oh, here we go. Here's this spiel. What's Mum going to say this time? And I'll be saying to you, well, what else? What can you do for yourself to make you feel that same way, that whatever that object will make you feel? Because at the end of the day, nothing outside of you will ever make you feel good if you don't feel good about you. And that's what I think a part of what I look at a house, like, it's about you, like, it's you, it's nothing else, it's you. And if you're not feeling good about you, it doesn't matter what else, you have. That's the work, like, that's kind of the work there. But then too, I have to sometimes be like, well, they're still kids and they're still going to want things, and he's only 7. So my husband would be like, oh, come on, do we have to go so deep all the time on all of this? Like, can't you just have that? And I was just like, okay, because you know what, at the end of the day, that's just really nice and warm and fuzzy, and that makes you feel good. So sometimes
it's a balance, right?
The balance of that, but really trying to instill that into them, and then think, like, where am I going with that? Like, what path am I going down? Like, why am I thinking that? And how could I think differently about it as well? So it's just a lot of just constantly checking yourself and checking where, like, that rabbit hole or that neural pathway that your body, like your brain's.
And I think it's so important too, right? Because like these whole industries are built on knowing our psychology better than we do, right? So the fact that like we can apply these kind of principles is, a little bit of
literally taking your power back.
Yeah. I agree with that. And you say it all the time, Bridget, like, we worked in media, so we've seen that. And I'll say that to my son, he'll be watching the cricket and seeing the KFC ad. And I was like, do you know why you're doing that? Because they've got child psychologists working on those ads, like, so they're teaching you, so you're doing exactly what you want them to do, which is fine. But I want you to have an awareness, like,
totally, we talk about it all the time.
But have an awareness that you're being manipulated in that way. One of
my husband's good friends, who's a very fancy advertiser, didn't like it when I said that to him.
What What did you say to him? What did you say?
So how do you feel about the fact that your children are being programmed and you're literally creating that? Not sure why he didn't like that.
Ouch.
I know. I then watched him go, well, they're not being programmed. I was like, Julie, leave it alone.
It's the urge to go back.
I went, oh, okay. What do you think it is? Like, you know? Anyway, we're off topic. I would love to bring us back around just by summing up a few points and saying, Tara, if there's anything that you would love to add to that, because I always think once you've gone through a podcast like this, particularly when it's highlighting your spaces and places physically and metaphysically that feels stuck and hard, it can feel foggy and overwhelming and too hard, and you're going to want to go like, but just tell me what to do. Just tell me the one thing. And I just want to make sure we're speaking to those people and saying, just listen to this again if you need to, because there can be a real beauty in first letting it sit wherever it sits. And then second, going back and listening with a bit more of a strategy in mind. I'm going to write down the things that I hear, the questions I want to ask myself, the ways that I want to go about this. If you're feeling like you want support and nourishment with that, then I would really, really offer you to reach out to Tara and say, actually, I really want and recognize that I need some support in creating this manifest space within my home, knowing that that helps easefully and artfully move me into the up-leveling that I'm asking myself to do, and you don't have to do it alone. Women can do hard things, but we need support in order to do that. We don't have to, and nor can we, do it all and succeed well with that. That's why we have support crews. So here's what really stood out to me, and you tell me if you would love to fill in any blanks that I've missed.
Go for it.
So to that woman, number one, what is going on in your home and psyche, and what does that represent to you? Number two, then when you look around your room or your home and you recognize that piles are unmade decisions, what does that reflect to you? Where's your area of resistance or growth? And how can you more artfully step into that? When clearing out, know that everything needs a home, a purpose, or a function, or you need to make a decision, and it's okay to sit with that. And number four, make manifest the space that liberates you. Create your sanctuary. Is it part of the vision of who you are becoming?
I love that.
You want
yeah, no, 100%. I was just going to say, it's all about, I guess, nourishing your soul. So it's all about knowing, you know, going deep and getting to know you and sitting with you in those areas that are really hard, just to sit with them and keep sitting with them. And for a couple of days, maybe, like, I guess really look at last year and be like, well, what was really, really hard? Like, what is really stopping my flow? What is making my life hard? What am I complaining about? Like, what is coming up constantly? And then just sit with it. And then the next day for 5 minutes longer, sit with it. And then make one decision. I just say just one small decision, because it's practice. It's also a skill set, you know, getting organized and making decisions and changing habits and behaviors is strengthening and I guess I just lost my train of thought then. But it's a skill set. So it's a mastery. And with anything, you have to start somewhere. And as you make one, you'll make another, and you make another, you make another. And also procrastination is just fear. So most of this is just fear. What are we scared of? Because at the end of the, like, if 2020 taught us anything, you know, we have no control over anything but us and our families. And that's what's, do you know what I mean? That's what's important. So don't then have sort of materialistic items getting in the way of you and your greatness and your magnificence and you being the best version of you. And you will learn so much about yourself by just walking. I just say, take a walk around your house. Everything that you want to know about you is in there at home. It'll take, like, it's all there and it's all being reflected back
really
at you.
powerful. So, Tara, we would love for you to tell us how we can connect with you and where we find you, and what sort of help and services you can offer someone who really is like, I'm ready for support to do this really hard up-leveling.
Sure. I have my website, so it's thehouseholdadvisor.com. So all my offerings are on there. I can also be found on Instagram and Facebook, which is the same, The Household Advisor. I have 8 workbooks, so they're like journal prompts in different areas, which is a really nice starting point for people that kind of know that they want to change but kind of want to dip their toe in the water. And I said that will have you really seeing your spaces differently. Some are for treasured items, some are for organisational blocks. Like they're all got sort of different themes. So depending on where you're at is kind of where you can dive in there. I also have 2 one-on-one consultations available. So one is moving beyond your stuck places, so nourish your home or nourish yourself. And they start in sort of different spots, and again you get your workbook with those, and then you work with me in a Zoom consultation and we do follow-ups, and I sort of facilitate and walk you through where you are stuck. And I've also just launched my Getting Organised for School ebook. So it's my first ebook, which is all my organisational wisdom imparted in there in the last it was about 4 years of school, and how we've sort of created and set up our spaces and lunch boxes and routines to facilitate the most easeful school experience for the children and for myself, so we can get out the door every day a little bit less stress. So there's lots of offerings, and I also have I'm happy to tailor mentoring programs to the needs of clients. So I've had lots of people reach out and have had specific areas that they're wanting to look at that they weren't quite sure. So please, feel free to send me an email or a direct message and ask me a question, and we can get started.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And we're also lucky enough to have you coming into Soul Driven Motherhood in the month of February as well, where we're putting together a workbook with you to share with everybody in there to help work through some of those spaces. And then we are inviting the beautiful women in Soul Driven Motherhood to actually video and share with the community their own stuck places in their home. And Tara's going to pick 2 spaces to analyse and work through live with some women in the group. So we're really, really lucky to have you in there. And of course, like any kind of space, they're all mirrors for each other. So we're going to learn so much about our own space simply by seeing how you work with women in their spaces.
100%. I will be learning along with all of you as well. So thank you. I'm so excited. So excited. I love it. Every time, as I said, every time I work with someone new and go into a new home, I learn, I have a great time, but I also learn a lot about myself as well, which is wonderful.
Beautiful. It's so amazing. Thank you. So if you're ready to connect the dots between what you've decided you want to manifest in, hopefully you've done that in your month of January, and you want to bring that through into what that looks like as you stepping forwards as a woman in the world and certainly within your space, then please come and join us for Liberate with Tara in the month of February in Soul Driven Motherhood, which you can find out about at nourishingthemother.com.au or Nourishing the Mother on socials. We will have all of Tara's links, including where you can find her workbook and workbooks and services, in the show notes. And of course, we'll be talking about her through the month of Feb. So please find the way that feels best for you to connect, because there's nothing more than all 3 of us want than for women. And I guess our hearts is most particularly taken by mothers who we know it is such an experience of self-evolution and trying to balance the raising and the values and the experiencing of the world through these children that come through us, and trying to do that for ourselves in a really meaningful and rich way. So we really all want you to be liberated and to feel that, and however we can best facilitate that, we would really love the honour to be able to. So please make sure you connect with Tara at the Household Advisor and us, Nourishing the Mother, and we'll see you in Soul Driven Motherhood.
We hope you enjoyed these podcasts and you are full of inspiration and ideas for where you want to take your next year ahead. If this was something that resonated with you, we'd love you to share on socials. Let us know what landed. Let us know what you're visioning. We love to hear from our listeners.
And if there's something missing, then please drop us a line via email or via our socials, because we would love to be able to answer your questions and take the conversation where you need it to go.
What are you doing? Now to connect with you, Jules?
Is julietenner.love. And you, Bridget?
bridgetwood.life. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.